What is going on, everyone? It's Ultimate Spy 53 here, and welcome to another episode of Reviewed number 143. And today, I'm going to be reviewing Spy Kids, All the Time in the World, the sequel to Spy Kids 3, Game Over, and the fourth and final installment in the Spy Kids Quadrilogy. So what did I think of Spy Kids All the Time in the World? Well, I thought it was way better than the last movie. Game Over was just awful. I mean, there was so much wrong with it. But this one, it was much more improved. This movie came out about 7 years after the last movie, and it is the final movie in the Spy Kids film series. And they actually ended up rebooting the series for Netflix. They got a Netflix show. It's called Mission Critical. I haven't yet seen it, but I think this movie, it was more impressive, I think, because there was a lot more physical sets used. Just like in the first film. I feel like there was a lot more physical sets in the film, which is good. Like the gear room. I think that's the only green screen set that I saw in the movie. I mean, I knew it was green screen just because, based off of the effects and all that stuff, but, I was more impressed because a lot of this movie they made, there wasn't a whole lot of sets. Like at all. There was like one, I think there was like one set, and like the on location sets. That's another story. But like I'm talking about the real set. Like this movie had real sets. It had actual practicals. I like that. It was a lot more impressive, which I really like that, because that was, we haven't seen a lot of practical things since the first movie. And speaking of which, this movie had a throwback to the first film actually, kind of. The beginning of the movie kind of has that idea, like, oh, our stepmom is a spy, kind of thing, and Rebecca even says, the line from the first movie of, she can't be a spy, she's not cool enough, kind of thing, which I kind of liked a lot. That was a really cool little throwback to the first movie. In addition, the kids that they cast for the roles of Rebecca and Cecil are just so adorable. Rebecca is so cute too. Like, they're both really cute. They're just like the best, and I really like that. Of course, the actress who plays Rebecca has grown up to become a gorgeous girl now. She's 17 and she's gorgeous. But I just felt like it was, it was good to have a new lead, to have, the torch go to someone else. And of course, they never made a fifth film, but it was still a good thing because the actors who played Carmen and Juni were too old to be playing the Spy Kids in the movie, so they basically were in the movie to kind of give the torch on, to like pass the torch basically, which I liked a lot. I also really liked Argonaut. He was really fun. He was voiced by Ricky Gervais, who is a British actor, and I mean, the only thing I've seen him in is the Night of the Museum movies, but he voiced the dog, Argonaut, who's also like he's basically this robot dog, which I liked. He was really fun. He had a lot of really cool things, like gadgets, because he's a robot dog. He has gadgets like oil slick and butt bomb, which I really found were hysterical. They were just fun, they were cool little things. And I just like the fact that Argonaut, because he's a robot dog, is a room in the movie where he discovers multiple versions of himself. Not obviously on Argonaut, but it was cool to see like him react like, oh my god, I'm not the only robot dog, because he's a robot dog. I liked him. He was a fun character. I really enjoyed it. I also liked the ship thingies that Rebecca and Cecil travel in to get to the OSS headquarters. I liked that. They were really cool, and I just loved I don't know, I felt like it was more impressive with the way they put the ships into the scene, because you'd imagine that they were using like green screen, which they probably were, but it felt more impressive because it was more realistic, because it felt like they were actually in the city. So I felt like the technology had gotten better, so it looked like they were actually in the city. More obviously, but it just kind of like, it looked like that, and I like that. And that has to do with how the visual effects were more improved with this movie. I thought the visual effects in the last three movies weren't great. They weren't as impressive because, again, they were older movies, but this one, because it came out in 2011, it's just way more impressive. I really enjoyed the visual effects. They were just a lot better and more convincing. I definitely feel like, in terms of the technology that was available when that movie came out, as opposed to the previous movies where the technology wasn't there into this, where the quality of the visual effects just wasn't as good. So, and because this was the final film in the Spy Kids film series, I call it the Quadrilogy because it was only 4 films. It was cool that they bridged the gap between the third and fourth films by bringing back Carmen and Juni. Like I said before, they brought those actors back. Obviously, they're 7 years older than they were in the last movie, but it was still good to have them because they bridged the gap, because they kind of like, oh yeah, they're still around, they're just older now. So I like that. I really liked that. I really thought that was amazing, and it just bridged that gap because it is a standalone sequel, but the fact that those characters were still in the movie means that it really bridged it. It really made, completed the story, finished out the story, which I think is really good. Finished out that story arc for the 4 films that they made, which I thought that was really impressive. And again, because this was the final film, and I felt like the plot was really good. I like the idea of time and all that stuff with speeding everything up. I really thought that was interesting. I would like stories with that there was time, all that stuff, and it's just because of course Doctor Who and all that stuff, but just in general, it was a very interesting idea for a final movie. To end the quadrilogy, as it's called now, it was just perfect. I really like that, because each film is different in their own way, but this film just made it perfect. It was fun to have time involved in the film. Another thing about the movie is that Alexa Vega, who plays Carmen in the movie, she again returns to play the character for the last time. And I noticed that she was way more attractive. I mean, it's obvious that she's grown up and all that stuff, and 7 years can be really added to you, but like, she's just, wow, she's changed a lot. Like, she's really grown up and all that stuff, and she's beautiful. She's gorgeous. Yeah, and I feel like it was fun seeing her in the movie, and also just in general, she just became an attractive woman. And another thing about the movie that really kind of threw me off, and again, it was because of the time gap that was in the movie. It was, I don't know how many years, like 7 at least, and it was the fact that because of the time gap, there's now a new director of the OSS, and the OSS is now completely redecorated, and it's just redesigned, obviously, because it's been 7 years since the last movie came out, and also 7 years in a time gap of 7 years, and it was like, it's crazy that it's been redesigned like that. It's like, what happened? I mean, it's because they changed it, and I like the fact that they made it different, because it's, sometimes it's fun to see old stuff, but there's nothing wrong with having new stuff in a new franchise like this, so, And there were all sorts of Easter eggs and references to the last 3 films in the form of gadgets and toys that Carmen and Juni used in those films. We have the NX Super Guppy from the first film. We have Machete's RX Express spy plane. I'm reading it off here right now. Thumbs are in the background, which I really thought was cool. Like, the biggest Easter egg is the thumbs. The mutator and brains, which is really cool. The jetpacks, the electric shock gumballs, the scuba suits, and also the metal box that Juni accidentally handcuffs himself in the first movie. So all those are from the first movie. From the second movie, we have the one-person helicopter. I don't even know what that's actually called. Just a helicopter, it looks like. Ralph. Actually, there's more than one. It was Ralph's. Ralph is the little robot bug. It was like Spider-Man, basically, in the second film. And apparently there's more than one Ralph. There's like multiple Ralphs, which I found really cool. So I like the fact that they brought that back. And then for film 3, Game Over, there was a giant robot head from the end of that movie. We have Carmen's suit, and later on in the movie, Juni's suit. And then there are other robot dogs like Argonaut. And the really, really cool thing is that we have footage from both Spy Kids 2 and 3 featuring Juni and Carmen, which I found really cool. But the idea of that footage is to represent, this is Juni, her brother she hasn't seen in 7 years. But it was cool to see that footage from the previous movies. Kind of, it's all connected. This movie takes place 7 years after the end of the third movie. There's all these Easter eggs, references, all that stuff, and I found that was really cool. So I was really impressed by all the Easter eggs I found in that little area, little division, like the little place where all the gadgets and stuff like that from the previous films were. Because that's a really cool way to to show, it's still a Spy Kids movie, because there's always references to the Easter eggs from the previous movies, and I like that. That was cool. Another thing from the movie that I was like, he's lucky. Was that Cecil or what I'll call the brother of Rebecca, the one who has hearing aids? He finds a cereal bar in the room where they're staying in, and it's like, I wish I could eat that stuff, because it's great. It's like there's all this sugary cereal from this cereal bar, where it's like, so I'm like, Jose have Fruit Loops, Trix, Captain Crunch, all that stuff. It's like, man, I want that. It's just like, wow, that's cool. I would love that. Another thing about the movie that I was kind of confused about, and I mean, it's not real clear. I mean, Carmen does give them insight about how they're related, but is the fact that Marissa, their stepmom, she's the aunt of Carmen and Juni, and which means that Gregorio or Ingrid must have had a sister, and that sister must have been Marissa. I have no idea which one, but it's obvious because if she's the aunt of Carmen and Juni, that must mean that either Gregorio or Ingrid had a sister, and that sister is their aunt. Basically, the family tree is that possibly Marissa is Gregorio's sister or Marissa is Ingrid's sister. I have no idea, but that's basically where the connection is in the family tree, which I found really interesting. It's like, huh, you know, what do you know? It was cool to have that little thing in there because Marissa's a Cortez. And one thing about that movie that I found kind of funny in a little way, because all these movies are supposed to have some kind of comedy in them, is that TikTok, one of the villains of the movie, has like this high-pitched voice, and it's super weird and also kind of fun at the same time. It's like, I think Robert Rodriguez, the director of the movie, probably made his voice high-pitched just to add some humor into the movie, probably, I don't know, but I'm guessing that's what happened. I have no idea. I still found it rather silly, so, And one gadget that was used incorrectly in the movie by Rebecca was the Machete electric gumball. In the first film, it was introduced as this gumball that you spit out once you want to chew it, and then it hits anything robotic, like a thumb or one of the robot children. And she uses it incorrectly. She chose it, and then it's like, oh, this doesn't work because she wasn't using it correctly. So she thinks it wasn't working. It was working, but she didn't use it correctly. She didn't know how to use it. I think that's what happened because she didn't know how to use it. So it's like, they gotta really understand, like, look at the manual or whatever. Like, how you use it? Oh, you chew it and then you spit it out at a robotic thing, and that paralyzes it. So she didn't read the fine print there. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but the quality of the movie and just the movie itself is way better than the first three. I thought the first three weren't as good as this movie, honestly. I mean, this movie got 22%, which is probably the worst scoring out of all the movies, but I just felt like this movie was better. It was way better. It was more impressive. I was impressed by this movie. It was like, compared to the other three, I gotta say, I was a lot more impressed. A couple of the gadgets that were featured in the movie, one of them I really liked, and that's Rebecca's whip. I just liked it. I just thought it was really cool. And I like the hammer hands too, but the whip was just cool because, I mean, it's a whip. It's awesome. It's electrical and purple, and it's just like that. I loved it. It was cool. Probably one of the coolest new gadgets that was featured in the film. It's awesome. And of course, the soundtrack is always awesome, as always. I feel like the soundtrack is probably the only redeemable fact about the movies, honestly. I mean, this movie was pretty good, but just in general, the soundtrack is just what makes it really fun. That's true for a lot of movies. The soundtrack is really important. I feel like that's the main aspect of movies that makes it really good is soundtrack, and yeah, as always, the soundtrack is awesome. I loved it. And one line that's said by Carmen throughout all the movies is, "Oh shit, talking mushrooms." The idea is from the first movie where Carmen almost says, "Oh shit," where she says it a bit longer and turns into, "Oh, she's talking mushrooms." She's like, "Oh shit, talking mushrooms," and I liked it. It's fun that they brought that back for this one. It's in all the movies, and I love the fact that they have like that one line throughout a whole franchise. Like in Star Wars, it's "I have a bad feeling about this," and in this movie, it's "Oh shit, talking mushrooms." I'm like, wow, I can't believe they're bringing that line back. It's fantastic. One of the twists in this movie, and it happens a lot in films, more than I know, is that the new director of the OSS turns out to be the main villain of the movie, The Timekeeper, which is like, wow. How many times has that been used? How many times has the good guy in the movie turned out to be the bad guy? Well, quite often actually. So, yeah, I didn't really see it coming, but I kind of figured there might have been a twist happening in the movie. I wasn't sure, but I feel like it happens a lot where the protagonist turns out to be the antagonist again. It's like, it happens so many times in films. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's like, it happens so often that it's like totally new. It's like not ever happened before. And one of the cool Easter eggs that was kind of referencing the last movie is that later in the movie, I think it's the very end of the movie, is that Cecil is playing a game, and it's literally taken from that very end of the last movie where you're supposed to protect the city from the giant robots. I thought that was cool, despite the fact that Game Over was awful. I still thought that was cool that they had that in there, that they did that. They had, they're like, oh yeah, remember the last movie? Here's a giant robot. There's a game that Cecil plays where it's from the exact scene. It's like, wow. That's cool. I mean, not the exact scene, but same idea. And one of the Cortezes actually makes an appearance as a cameo in the movie, Machete. Well, I saw it on the cast list, but I forgot he was in the movie. I kind of figured he might be, but I actually forgot when I was watching like, he was in the cast list, but I'm like, where is he? It's like, I almost forgot that he was in the movie, but he shows up. Then Trejo comes back to play Machete for the final time as a little cameo, as the scientist who basically is like in this lab creating new, I guess, gadgets and toys and stuff like that, and he's one of the scientists that is frozen in time. But I mean, even if it was a cameo, it was so cool to see him again because he's part of the Cortez family. You gotta have him in there. I think he aside from Carmen and Juni, he's the only member of the Cortez family that actually is in all of the movies, which I found really cool because the actors who played Gregorio and Ingrid were not in the movie. They did not come back, which I kind of felt like was okay, you know. The last movie wasn't that great, so whatever. But you know, at least I had Machete. That was cool, and that's really all I can say about Spy Kids All the Time in the World. Great movie. I will say I was impressed by it, but you know, it's still the last movie, and it's sad that they only made 4 of them. But hey, they rebooted it with the Netflix show, which I have not seen yet. But it's fun, you know. It's a fun movie, well done. I was more impressed with this movie. I felt like Robert Rodriguez really set up his game from the last movies. Really like okay, I did this in these movies. I'm gonna do it differently. I don't know if that's what his plan was, but I was more impressed because of course the technology was better in the year that movie came out. So it's like I was more impressed. I mean, there's no number in the movie. It's just called Spy Kids All the Time in the World. It's not called Spy Kids 4. I mean, yeah, it's often referred as that, but it's not that. It's All the Time in the World. I felt like it was a much better movie. So that's all I can say about this movie. Great film. I really enjoyed it, and you know, it's fun. It's fun to have it closing out with you know, familiar faces and you know, pretty good cast. You know, got Jessica Alba. That's awesome. Invisible Woman. You know, what do you expect? So yeah, I'm gonna give this movie a 8 out of 10. That's a pretty good score. It's not perfect. I don't think any of the other Spy Kids movies are perfect. It was still a fun watch, and I enjoyed it. So 8 out of 10, and it was good. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Reviewed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button. I really do appreciate your support. And if you're new to this channel, subscribe for more episodes of this series and other series that I do, as well as other great content. And I'll be back next time with another episode. Alright? See ya.